Hi everyone, my name is Hauja. I'm one of the observation secretaries of Cambridge University Astronomical Society for this year. Today I'm at the Institute of Astronomy at West Cambridge to give you a virtual tour of the Society's telescope, the Northumberland Telescope, which is right behind me. And now, let's go inside and see how we can use this telescope. Right. After you sign for the key from Churchill College Porter's Lodge, you can open the door of the Northumberland Telescope. But be careful, the alarm will sound, and if you pass the test, you'll be given the password to turn the alarm off. Right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the historical Northumberland Telescope. 12-inch in diameter and 6 meters in focal length, which gives us an F ratio of 20. Now let's turn on the light here. This switch is for white light, which is probably not something we would want to use in an observation session. And these two switches are for red lights, which is what we want to use. The Northumberland Telescope is quite famous and historical, and when it was built around 200 years ago, it was one of the largest refractors in the world at its time. It was designed by George Airy, and one interesting fact about the Northumberland Telescope is that someone using the Northumberland Telescope observed Neptune for the first time, but unfortunately they did not report it, so it didn't count as the discovery of Neptune. Once you are inside the Northumberland Dome, the first thing you should do before starting any observation is to look to the left and log your record in this logbook. So you should first state what date you are doing the observation and your name and how many people, the time, etc. I'm not going to show you the names just to protect people's privacy. Right, let's now begin our observation, and we first open the dome. Before opening the dome, it's always good to be careful to first point the telescope away from the zenith, away from the very top, just in case some debris might fall during the opening of the dome. To open the dome, we will use this latch over here, and the one with the weight on to unlatch the dome, and then we can open it using this pulley. When opening the slit, ensure that the slit is open at a position where the lower end is invisible, so behind the dome, but the upper end is still visible. This is to ensure that we don't overturn it so that the slit falls off, as there's no stopper preventing that. However, if the lower end is still visible, some rain in the rail might drip into the dome, which is not good either. The next thing we will do is remove the lens cap. And obviously the telescope is quite high, so we can only remove the lens cap by moving it downwards a bit. However, we need to be very careful that we should never point the telescope below the horizon. And that is approximately where the height of the wall is. This is because the primary lens of the Northumberland Telescope is not fixed in place, so it might fall off if you point it downwards below the horizon. What we'll do is we'll try to point it above the chair a little bit, so we can stand on the chair and remove the lens cap. Right, and now the telescope is ready for our observation. And the next thing we need to do is to find our target and point the telescope at the target. To do that, we'll use the computer system here. The computer system will be able to find the target and show us the coordinates of the target so that we can then point our telescope at that. Right, okay. The screen is a bit too dim to see. I hope you can still see that. So there are two windows currently open, one showing the coordinates of the target and one command line prompt which we'll use to tell the computer which target we want to see. So the command is go cat for any object other than planets and moon. So say for example we want to find the star Vega. The tab showing the coordinates will automatically update, and we'll want to look at this line here saying target, and this one will be the right ascension and this one is the declination. However, if we want to observe planets or the moon, we will need to type planet, say Jupiter, hit enter, and then type next and hit enter again. And now the coordinates will update automatically. As I said, we will need to use the right ascension and declination coordinates given by the computer, and the declination of the telescope, so where it is currently pointing, is shown on this dial here. And the declination is shown here on this scale. So this is what we will use to point our telescope at the desired target. So say we now want to observe Jupiter, the coordinate of which we've already found using the computer. We will turn the telescope manually until it points at the desired position in the sky. So the right ascension is 02411. The declination is 1:16. 23. That's about it. And of course, the next thing to do is to rotate the slit so that its opening is where the telescope is now pointing at. And to rotate the slit, we use this pulley here. Right, that will do. Now that the telescope is pointing at the desired position, we have one more thing to do, which is to turn on the motorized tracking. As you have seen, we need to move the telescope manually, as this is not a sort of go-to mount. And we know that the Earth rotates around its axis, so the stars appear to be constantly rotating as well. Therefore, we need to rotate our equatorial mount continuously with the same angular speed so that the stars will remain in your field of view. And this is where this motor comes into play. The procedure for turning on tracking is first, engage the gears by pushing this lever up into this position. Second, turn on the tracking switch, and you will immediately hear the motor start spinning. Third, tighten the 3 clamps on the right ascension axis of the telescope. They may be at different positions depending on the where the telescope is pointing at. And now, the telescope will be tracking and continuously pointing at the object. Then we need to install our eyepieces for observation. So the eyepieces for the Northumberland are here, located in this wooden box. So here we've got a couple of eyepieces here in this box. The one with the longest focal length is 60 millimeters, which is the one we want to use first, as this gives us a large field of view, which is easy to find the targets. And now we would install the eyepiece here on the telescope. So this 60 millimeter eyepiece is a 2-inch eyepiece. Therefore, we take out this 2 to 1.25 inch adapter and install the 2-inch eyepiece directly. When using this eyepiece, however, we need to not push it towards the very end because the barrel is a little bit short. If we do that, it might not focus properly. So we leave a distance of like 2 millimeters out. And then we can observe our target. However, it's likely that the telescope is not pointing exactly at the target. So we will use this hand control to slew the telescope slightly in the right ascension. And To adjust the telescope in declination, we can just adjust it by pulling and pushing because the declination is not motorized. And to adjust the right ascension, we use these two buttons, minus or plus. However, the speed of the slewing is just 1. So the slewing is quite slow. So we don't want to point the telescope like 1 degree off and using this to slew it, because you will just wait here pressing the button for 1 minute doing nothing. Right, say we've now finished observing Jupiter and we want to observe our next target, whatever that might be. Before moving the telescope manually, it's really important to remember to turn off tracking properly first. Here, what is a bit tricky is that the procedure for turning off tracking is not exactly in the reverse order of turning on tracking. So to turn off tracking, first we loosen the 3 screws on the right ascension axis. Second, we disengage the gear by pulling this lever into the original position. Third, we turn off the tracking switch. One interesting thing to mention is that this button here, the yellow and red button, allows us to adjust the slewing rate, the tracking rate between lunar speed and sidereal speed. And then we can follow the above procedure again to find the target coordinate using the computer, and then manually turn the telescope, and then turn on the tracking and observe our next target. So say now we've finished our observing and we want to pack up. We'll first remove the eyepiece. And place the original placeholder eyepiece inside. This is just to stop spiders from crawling inside and making web inside. Next, I'm gonna replace the lens cap. So we do the same thing. We point the telescope to slightly above the chair so we can stand on that and replace the lens cap. Again, be very careful never to point the telescope below the horizon. Next, I'll just pull the telescope back a bit. And move the slit back to its initial position. Then close the slit. And latch the slit. And the last thing to do is to point the telescope towards the zenith or the very top. This is to minimize the stress in the telescope tube and to prolong its lifetime. and set the declination to 52, roughly the latitude here, and it will automatically point towards the zenith when we adjust the right ascension. Cool. And that's it. This is how you use the Northumberland Telescope at the University of Cambridge. Before we go, we need to sign off on the logbook. Just log here the time you finish off, and you're good to go. If you are interested, we've got the Ops book here, which you can write about anything interesting that you have observed and anything interesting that happened, anything not quite right that you noticed during your observation, just in case you discover some mysterious stars and not report it. And we've got a physical copy of our Ops guide here, so if in doubt of any procedure, you can always consult the Ops guide here. Right, that's basically everything. Don't forget to turn off the lights, the red light, the white light, and don't forget to take your stuff. Now we close this door. And we reactivate the alarm here. You'll be given the code to do that once you pass your ObsTest. And the alarm will go off when we close the door. Cool. So this is how you would use the Northumberland Telescope for your own stargazing session once you pass your test. And this is basically what we do at ObsDemo sessions. So if you sign up and come to 2 of the ObsDemo sessions, and then you can sign up for an ObsTest, after which you will be given access to the telescope at any time you wish. If you're interested, do subscribe to our society's mailing list, and yeah, sign up for the events when you're free. By the way, we also organize public observation nights where our ObsTechs will show you interesting objects in the sky with more than just this telescope. We've got a couple of other the sort of more modern telescopes as well, and you are very all welcome to come. You're all very welcome to come. Thank you.